Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. So I am so excited today to present to you 10 fun facts about Rogue, which is my upcoming published novel. At the time, I don't know what day this video is going to come out, but I will have a link in the description below to a pre-order or a Goodreads link, basically, so you can add that book to your to-be-read list. And Rogue is Valiant Book 5, but if you haven't read the previous Valiant books, don't worry. The series is kind of designed in a way where you can come in at any point until later on in the series. So I hope that you guys still enjoy this. Let's get right into this. I don't know how to go full screen, so this is all new to me. So, all right. So, fun fact number 1. Rogue was actually inspired by an anime called Fairy Tail. The mage character in Fairy Tail, Lucy, could summon celestial spirits with her keys. So I took that to develop the summoning mage magic on Ashira, which I will have a link to a video about that appearing on the screen if I have published it at the time of recording this. If not, I will add it later. So that may be coming next week, but look out for that, where I break down the details of the magic that I built for this world, which is Ashira. So I really liked the concept, and so instead of celestial spirits, I obviously did constructs, which are a lot of them, they come out and they appear to be real. So like you can summon warriors, you can summon axemen, you can summon mermaids and dolphins and phoenixes and unicorns and tigers and all kinds of different creatures, both magical, real, fantasy, realistic, humans and humanoids and human type warriors and stuff like that. Just all kinds of different creatures. And basically every mage has a key ring and keys that go on the key ring, and each key is connected to a construct that you can summon to use and do your bidding. But that was all inspired by Fairy Tail's main character called Lucy. So, fun fact number 2. So Mythix is one of the characters in Rogue, and a lot of his sarcastic comments, as well as his wit and his humor, was based off of and inspired by my husband. My husband came up with a lot of the original ideas for him that started off in the beginning, though Mythix's character did change in the editing process, but the core of who he is very much my husband, and very much my husband not only inspired that, but came up with a lot of his sarcastic moments. So yeah, my husband was the one that came up with a lot of Mythix's original sarcastic ideas, because at the time that I wrote this, I think I was shortly coming out of high school, and I wasn't very good at writing that stuff yet, but he had to change in the editing process, and I had to come up with some new sarcastic comments for all the new content. And that was a bit of a doozy, but I think, I ended up balancing it out well. So fun fact number 3 about Rogue. So after the first round of editing with my amazing editor, Heather Pruitt, I just want to shout out Heather for a minute because she is amazing. And her services, the way that she edits, her editing process, it meshes so well with me, and she's so good at catching things, not just grammar and line by line editing and stuff, but developmental editing and big picture stuff and character arc stuff. And it's just amazing. So after the first round of edits with her, I added a lot of scenes to help Rogue develop further, and specifically Mythix. So the changes actually helped me fall in love with the story. Before editing it with Heather, I wrote it once, obviously back, I don't remember the year, but it was shortly after I was out of high school, I believe. And I wrote it, and then I just moved on. I didn't really hate it. I didn't really like it. It was just a book that I wrote. And so it wasn't until trying to publish it was very tedious, because I went through and I was going through beta readers, and they really loved it. But they really loved it and everything, but going through the process of it was tedious for me because I didn't really care for the book all that much. And then I found Heather and hired her services, and she edited it, and I went through her first round of edits. And I added things and made the changes. So then she went through it and edited a second time. And now that I'm going through those edits, I actually love this story. I love the story. I love the characters. And I fell in love with Rogue. And I only was able to fall in love with Rogue again because of Heather and because of all the changes that she made. And honestly, the book, it was like Rogue prior to Heather was just a skeleton. And I feel like Heather's editing has helped me add the muscles and the tissue and the skin and all of that to the original skeleton of the book. Um, Sorry, that was kind of a random metaphor, but you get my point though. And I feel like that's why I didn't really like it as much at first, because it wasn't complete. Yeah, like it didn't have everything it needed yet. And that was all because of Heather. So massive shout out to Heather. You are amazing. And she does do editing service. So I'll link to her YouTube channel down below, as well as her Instagram down below. For anybody who's interested in hiring an editor, she is the one to choose. All right, fun fact number 4. So at the time that I wrote this was my first time writing a world made entirely out of water. So it was very interesting to figure out the logistics behind a world made out of water. And a lot of details that I never would have thought of came up in that, like, where does their food come from? For any food that, like, I remember talking about, like, I had them eat a lot of vegetables and apples just because at the time the idea of seafood didn't really come to my mind because I don't like eating it in real life. So it just didn't come up. And I'm like, hold on a minute, where do the apples come from? At the time that I wrote it, I didn't think about that. But when I've been editing it this last couple of years, I've been like, oh, I have to know this stuff. I have to add that in there. Like, they have animals. Like, where do the horses come from? What about cats? I remember when I first wrote it, I had to think through the buildings of the architecture, like how much, like, I feel like everything would have been made out of wood, but then where does the wood come from? It has to be imported. How does it get imported to their world? So they clearly have not necessarily space travel, but the ability to access other planets, since theirs is entirely made out of water. And this is also a fantasy, not a sci-fi. So how do I address that? And, what about the building structure? So it was just all these little details that I never thought of. And this is my first time having to really think about the realistic logistics of a world like theirs. So, fun fact number 5. Rogue was actually my first time, and I believe my only instance of writing a fantasy that has comedy. So it's like a fantasy comedy, comedic fantasy, as I like to call it. But in reality, because it does fit in with the Valiant series and still has the overarching Valiant story connected to it, I would then consider it to be more of a lighthearted fantasy. But it is my first fantasy that has a lot of comedy in it, or at least my attempt at it. So I'm saying that, and then if anybody who's watching this reads it and doesn't think it's funny, that's going to be pretty bad and embarrassing on my part. But yeah, I've never really written a book like Rogue since then. I have had books that have comedy in it, and obviously the characters in Rogue, certain characters within Rogue, are relevant to the series plotline, and therefore some of the series does have some funny moments in it. But I've never written one that was like solely dedicated and focused around the funny moments between the characters, not like, well, in the same way that Rogue was, basically. So, all right, fun fact number 6. A lot of beta, I don't know why I had my fun fact number 6. So when I realized it was time to publish Rogue after I redid my series and caught back up and Assassin got released, I was like, okay, well, next up is Rogue. So a lot of so I sent it off to beta readers. That was my original, because at the time I couldn't afford to hire an editor. This was a couple years ago, last year, the year before that. So a lot of beta readers who actually read through the Rogue did not like Mythic's sarcastic character. He's a jokester who really liked to antagonize people. And so when I went through it with Heather, my editor, she really helped me to fix him, and honestly just helped me to fix him. That's literally as plain as I can put it. And so I made the changes to him. But the fun fact about this is that in the next round, when she sent me the first round, I made the changes, sent it back to her. She went through it a second time, and then I got her feedback back now and been going through it. this time the changes that I made him too sappy. And I thought that was hilarious, just because he goes from being this antagonistic kind of character to this one who's kind of a sappy little puppy. And so part of the editing round that I've been doing this time, which is the final time, is finding that balance. And I feel like I found it really well. And the fact that I actually really like Mythic's character and adore him more than I used to is proof that with Heather's guidance, I have found the balance between his jokester, sarcastic, antagonistic kind of guy versus his sappy kind of side that actually does care about people, and finding that. And part of that included building new parts of his character, his backstory. I didn't include that in the original version. I didn't have any information in him about him whatsoever. And so that was part of the process. And it was just an interesting dynamic to deal with and to do. And I feel like the difference in his character is like so massive. It's amazing to see. So fun fact number 7. So the original prologue of Rogue was much shorter. Obviously, a lot of these fun facts have to do with how much changed in the editing process. And I'm excited to tell my beta readers about this, because there's a lot of changes that it's not even the same book anymore, really. Like it is the same book, but it feels vastly different to me. But the prologue was much shorter, and it only had I think a brief paragraph from the villain's perspective. And by villain, I mean one of the overarching villains in the whole Valiant series. And it had no scene with the Chosen, which again are the main characters from the Valiant series. But some of the beta readers thought that when the Chosen come in at the end of the book, it felt a little random. And for first time readers who are just jumping into the series in Rogue, it felt a little like, okay, who are these people? What's going on? And they felt like they should have been introduced sooner. So that was part of the thing, is I added in before my first round of edits with Heather. Because of my beta reader feedback, I lengthened out the prologue. I added more to the villain's perspective. And after that, I added in a scene with the Chosen to introduce the series plot line, what's going on behind the scenes type of stuff in the prologue, so that readers who are coming in to the series and don't know anything about what's going on can really get a handle. Okay, this is the series. This is what's going on. And it introduced the Chosen, which are, again, the characters from the Valiant series. It introduced them in a really fun and interesting way. So that way it doesn't feel completely just thrown in at random at the end, toward the end. So fun fact number 8. So the layout of Linnea and Linessa's house is actually inspired by an apartment that I used to live in with my mom and my sister when I was, I think, early high school. So a sophomore, I want to say freshman, sophomore. So their house is an actual house, not an apartment, and it's made of wood, and it only has one story. Our apartment had multiple stories, but it was our apartment was on the bottom, so there were people on top of us, and was made of brick and stuff. So the material's different and everything, but the interior layout in my head is actually that apartment that we used to live in. And of course, Linnea and Linessa's house is a house that's floating on water, like a dock, so it rocks and it moves with them. Everything in that world is made out of wood on a dock, pretty much. So everything has that rock and kind of rolling feeling that comes from being on the sea because of the waves. But the actual interior is basically, the layout is very similar to my old apartment I used to live in. So if you guys would like me to do a video building that in Dungeon Alchemist, let me know in the comments below. I could also design it in Incarnate. So if you guys want either of those, let me know in the comments below. I may go ahead and do that anyway. And I also have designed a arena and stuff for one of my other books in Dungeon Alchemist. So I'll have that. That'll appear as a card on the screen if you guys want to check that video out. It is so much fun, and I'm definitely looking forward to doing more Dungeon Alchemist voiceover builds. But moving on back to our fun facts. Fun fact number 9. Linnea and Linessa have never actually seen land before. They grew up on Ashira, which is an ocean world, so they've literally only ever experienced underwater caves and the ground at the bottom of the ocean. So there are some jobs that they have to go to where they have to go to the bottom of the ocean and where the coral reefs are, where the ground is at the ocean. And so some of those have underwater caves. And some of these caves, when they go underwater, some of the caves and buildings and areas down there do have shields that hold off the water. So then you're walking on land. So they have a little bit of experience walking in underwater caves, and things like that. But it's not a whole lot, and they've never seen it up above the surface. They've never seen it out in the open. They've never seen trees or grass or anything like that. So they've never seen that kind of stuff. So for me, when I was thinking about the series and the possibilities of if these characters do have a bigger part to play in the overall series, their first time and experience with some of these things would be an interesting part to write. So that was really hard to say without spoilers, by the way. Fun fact number 10, this is the final fun fact about Rogue. So there are several instances in the book where things kind of like go wrong and they don't go as expected, but that adds to the goofy, lighthearted feeling of the story. And so a lot of the instances, like very rarely does anything ever go the way that they were really wanting it to or expecting it to. And so that creates this really goofy, like, oh, guess what's, I bet something's going to go wrong now. It's like, well, why did you say something? It creates this really goofy, lighthearted feeling to the story, along with the sarcastic quips between the characters and just the whole dynamic and stuff. So thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like and subscribe for more writing and reading videos every Monday. And in the meantime, if you want to know some fun facts about my other books, click here, because the Valiant series is a huge series. It's got 17 books in it. I'm only on book 5, so there's plenty of books coming. There's plenty of books that have already been released. Rogue, again, description down below. I'll have a link to either it or the pre-order or the order of it or whatever. So just check in the description below. But in the meantime, if you really want to know some fun facts about my first book in this series, then click here, because the fun facts about Hunter are definitely interesting, because that's the book that kind of started this whole series. So you don't want to miss that. So check that out. I was pointing here, but the fact is that I'm a circle, so it'll actually be like up here somewhere. So click that video so you don't want to miss the fun facts about Hunter, the book that started this whole series. Thanks for watching.